My name is John, and I have been married to Emma for over 10 years. We met at university, fell in love, and soon after graduation entered into marriage, full of hopes and dreams for the future. The first few years of our marriage were very happy, as we stabilized in our respective careers and enjoyed our time together as a couple. However, as time passed, our paths began to diverge, and Emma's job in marketing became more and more hectic, often requiring her to work overtime or travel. At first, I didn't mind because I knew she was working hard for our future. My own job at a design company is not slow, but it's more regular by comparison. Gradually, I began to feel that Emma was devoting more and more time to work and socializing, and less time to me and the family. Sometimes she would come home late and miss our dinner appointments due to socializing or working late. I tried to communicate with her, expressing my frustration and anxiety, but she would always end the conversation with a few words, citing her busy schedule. I remember one time, we managed to find a weekend to arrange a short trip to a nearby mountain town to relax and unwind. But the day before we were to leave, Emma was informed that she had to attend an important client meeting and had to cancel our plans. I was so frustrated and disappointed that I felt my position in her heart was no longer as important as my work. Things like that started to happen more and more often. Our communication became less and less, and our time together became shorter and shorter. The understanding and intimacy we once had to be replaced by coldness, detachment, and disconnection. I felt that I was becoming irrelevant in the marriage, and Emma seemed oblivious to the problem, focusing on her career and social life. It's not that I didn't try to save our relationship. I would prepare warm dinners when she came home late from work, give her comfort and support when she was feeling down, and offer to go out for leisure activities such as playing games or watching movies. But Emma would always say she didn't have the time or was too tired, so my efforts failed again and again. Slowly, I began to doubt and disappoint the marriage. The distance between us is getting farther and farther, and the sweetness and passion that once existed has disappeared. I asked myself more than once, how far can our marriage go? What is our future? Inside, the uneasiness and uncertainty is increasing, but I do not know how to speak, how to salvage the feelings of this gradually lost temperature. All I know is that if we keep this up, we're going to end up with a marriage that's going to be irreparable. As the estrangement between Emma and I grew, I began to notice a change in her. One fall, a new partner, Alan, arrived at Emma's firm, and Emma began to mention his name frequently, with a sense of excitement and longing that she couldn't quite put into words. At first, I didn't really care. I just thought she had met a like-minded friend who could help her with her work. Gradually, I realized that Emma started to put more effort into her appearance. She started to buy new clothes more often, spent a lot of time on her makeup every day, and went to the beauty salon for special treatments. This was a marked difference from her old self. For the first few years of our marriage, Emma was a simple, easygoing girl. She seldom put much effort into dressing up and always presented herself in a clean-cut image. She once told me with a smile that instead of wasting her time on these cosmetic changes, she would rather spend more time with me, read more good books, and enjoy life more. I was attracted by her honest and natural demeanor. Now, however, the Emma in my eyes is becoming more and more conscious of her appearance. Not only did she buy a lot of new clothes, but she also started to try some sexy outfits that she had never tried before. Once, I found some brand new lingerie in my closet, which was edgy and bold, unlike Emma's previous style. The lace trim and translucent designs surprised and disturbed me. Emma had never worn anything like this in front of me. I wondered if the sexy lingerie had been purchased to please Alan. In addition, Emma's makeup and hairstyle have become more sophisticated. She bought all kinds of high-grade cosmetics and sat in front of the dressing table for more than an hour every morning to dress herself up. Looking at her in the mirror, I could hardly recognize the girl who used to be so plain. I gradually realized that Emma would take extra care to dress up every time she went out with Alan. She would change into those newly bought clothes or wear sexy lingerie to make herself look attractive from the inside out. When she got home, even if it was late, she would stare at herself in front of the floor mirror in her bedroom with a satisfied smile on her face. I couldn't help but feel confused and uneasy. What was the purpose of this change? Who was she trying to please? My suspicions were soon confirmed when Emma started going out alone with Alan after work, sometimes to see a movie, sometimes to try out a new restaurant, and sometimes to socialize at events I didn't know about. Whenever I asked her tentatively about her whereabouts, she would always say lightly, "Oh, I'm just hanging out with Alan. He's a really fun friend." Gradually, these gatherings began to become more frequent and prolonged. On some occasions, Emma even stayed out all night, stumbling home in the early hours of the morning. The excitement and drunkenness on her face made my heart drop like an iceberg. I questioned her about where she had been and what had happened, but she just smiled and said, "Relax, honey. We were just at Alan's house having a little drink and chatting. You know, he's a good listener." I tried to salvage our relationship, hoping to bring us closer together through intimacy. But whenever I tried to make out with Emma, she refused on the grounds that she was too tired. Even when we did share a bed, she deliberately kept her distance and curled up in a corner of the bed. I reached out to embrace her, but found her body stiff and cold, with no response. I was filled with anxiety and doubt. Emma, who used to smile at me like a flower, now shied away from my touch. She had put all her passion and energy into another man, and I, like an outsider, could only watch it happen. I felt that I was losing Emma, the girl who had once haunted me, but now seemed to have crossed over into another world, and I could only stand helplessly and watch her back drift away. I knew that our marriage was on the brink of collapse, and Alan's presence accelerated the cracks in our relationship. Facing Emma's change and detachment, I felt powerless and lost like never before. The promises we made, the vows we made, now seemed so fragile and vulnerable. I didn't know what had happened between Emma and Alan, or whether I could salvage our faltering marriage. But I clearly realized that if I didn't do something, the last vestiges of warmth between us would be lost in the wind and eventually burst like a bubble. In my marriage to Emma, we had agreed on a few rules to maintain our trust and loyalty. One of the most important rules was to return to each other no matter how late it was and not to spend the night out. This agreement was considered the cornerstone of our marriage and a proof of our love for each other. However, as Emma and Alan became more and more involved, the agreement began to falter. At first, Emma would occasionally come home late, but she would always tell me in advance that she had been delayed by work or a friend's party. I chose to believe her, even if I felt uneasy about it. Gradually, these late nights became more and more common. On some occasions, Emma didn't even come home until the early hours of the morning, smelling of alcohol and unfamiliar perfume. I tried to communicate with her, expressing my concerns, but she always downplayed them, saying I was thinking too much. Our anniversary was supposed to be a day of celebration. I prepared a candlelight dinner in anticipation of a special evening with Emma. Instead, I was left alone. That night, Emma didn't come home. I called her phone over and over again, but there was no answer. I sat at the table, looking at the cold dishes, filled with disappointment and anger. I didn't understand how Emma could forget our anniversary and disappear without a word. I spent a sleepless night in torment. The next morning, I realized that Emma still hadn't come home. I dialed her number, and this time she answered. She said she had spent the night at Alan's house and was too drunk to drive. She sounded apologetic, but I could hear the perfidy behind it. I realized that Emma had broken our agreement completely. Not only was she spending the night away, but it was on our anniversary. It was a huge blow to me. I felt like my dignity had been trampled on and our marriage betrayed. I didn't argue with Emma or question her for more details. I just sent her a short message telling her that I was disappointed in her behavior and that she had broken our promise. Then I turned off my cell phone, not wanting to hear any more explanations or excuses from her. That day, I sat on the couch for a long time, staring out the window. I thought back to our wedding vows, to the sweetness and happiness we once had. Everything seemed so distant and unreal. I felt my heart breaking little by little, those once cherished things, but now so fragile. I knew that our marriage was on the brink of danger, and the promises that we had made seemed to pale in comparison. All the promises and commitments that we had made are now so pale and powerless, and Emma's betrayal has made me lose faith in this relationship. I began to doubt that we can go back to the old days. Can we find that pure love again? The road in front of me seemed to be getting blurry. I was no longer sure where my future with Emma would lead. Her change, her betrayal, made me feel more confused and painful than ever. I don't know if there is still room for our marriage to be salvaged, or if our relationship can return to its original beauty. But I realized that no matter how much hardship lay ahead, I had to face reality and make a choice. Because our marriage had come to a critical turning point, I needed to think about whether there was a future for us and whether I could still forgive Emma for what she had done. After I found out that Emma had violated our marriage agreement, our relationship hit an all-time low. I tried to communicate with Emma in the hope of saving our marriage, but Emma didn't seem to realize the seriousness of the problem. She continued to see Alan frequently and stayed out late, even at night. In the midst of my despair and helplessness, Emma suddenly told me she was pregnant, and I felt my whole world spinning. The news exploded like a bomb in my heart. It should have been a happy moment, but in the current situation of our marriage, it was more like a bolt from the blue. It's been a long time since Emma and I were intimate. Ever since Alan came along, our sex life has almost come to a standstill. Emma has always rejected my advances on the grounds that she is too tired or not feeling well, and I have gradually lost confidence and interest in our marriage. So, when Emma broke the news of her pregnancy, my first reaction was shock, followed by disbelief. Was the baby really mine? Or is it the product of Emma and Alan? This thought was like a poisonous thorn in my heart. I remember the day Emma told me the news. She came to me cautiously, with a hint of apprehension and anticipation on her face. She said she was 2 months pregnant and hoped that we would be able to welcome the new baby. But I couldn't feel the slightest bit of joy. I looked at her coldly and asked her whose child it was, and Emma looked shocked, as if she couldn't believe I was asking such a question. Emma looked shocked, as if she couldn't believe I was asking such a question, and eagerly explained that of course the baby was mine, and that she had never had sex with another man. But I couldn't believe her anymore. As far as I was concerned, Emma had already betrayed our marriage, and her relationship with Alan had gone beyond that of a friend. This child is probably the result of their affair. Emma saw my skepticism and anger. She started crying and begging for forgiveness, saying she knew her recent behavior had upset me, but she swore she had never crossed the line. She said the baby was a gift from God and a chance for us to start over. But my heart is already cold. Emma's tears and pleas cannot move me a bit. In my opinion, our marriage has come to an end. Emma's betrayal, Emma's lies, has completely destroyed my trust and expectations of this relationship. I told Emma I wanted a divorce. I couldn't take this marriage anymore. I couldn't take her cheating and betraying me anymore. I didn't care if the baby was mine, because I couldn't trust her anymore. Emma broke down. She fell to her knees in front of me and begged me to give her a chance. She said she'd do anything for our marriage, that she'd cut off all contact with Alan. She said she couldn't live without me, couldn't let our children grow up in a broken home. But my mind was made up. I told her coldly that there was no future between us. I didn't want to hear any more explanations or promises from her, because they were meaningless to me. The trust between us had been completely destroyed by her. I consulted a lawyer about the legal process of divorce and the problems I might face. The lawyer told me that if we could not reach an agreement, the division of property could become a tricky issue. We need to consider the distribution of real estate, savings, investments, and other aspects. In addition, Emma's pregnancy complicates the situation. If the child is born, we will also need to consider custody and alimony. This will certainly make the divorce even longer and more difficult. But nevertheless, my mind was made up. I couldn't stand this marriage anymore, and I couldn't stand Emma's betrayal and hurt. I started to prepare the necessary documents for the divorce, including the list of assets, witness statements, etc. I knew it would be a long battle. Emma is still trying to make things right. At one point, she even offered to take a paternity test to prove that the child was mine. But I refused. Because in my opinion, it doesn't matter who the child belongs to anymore. What mattered was that there was no more trust between us. I began to distance myself from Emma, trying to avoid any interaction with her. I buried myself in work, trying to numb the pain with my busy schedule. I knew that I was going through the darkest time of my life, but I had no choice but to move forward. The divorce process would be a disaster, but I knew I had to face reality and make a choice. Because I couldn't stand this marriage anymore, and I couldn't stand what Emma had done to me. I used to think that our love could overcome everything. But reality tells me that love is so fragile, so vulnerable. In the face of betrayal and deception, even the greatest love will fall apart. After I filed for divorce, Emma acted very shocked and panicked. She came to me several times to try to save our marriage. She claimed that she and Alan were just friends and had never crossed the line. She pleaded with me to give her a chance to start over, saying she would do anything to change our marriage. But in my opinion, it was too late. Emma's betrayal had completely shattered my faith and expectations in the marriage. I couldn't trust any of her promises. I couldn't tolerate any more of her deception. I told her firmly that my decision had been made and I would insist on a divorce. I started to prepare for the divorce. I consulted with an attorney to learn about the legal process and potential problems of divorce. I began to gather evidence of Emma's inappropriate relationship with Alan, including testimony from friends and family and records of Emma's whereabouts. On the issue of property division, I argued that Emma's fault should be taken into account and that I should have the upper hand in the division. Our joint assets include a $5 million property, $2 million in savings, and $2 million cars. I think I should get at least 60%. After all, it was Emma's infidelity that ruined our marriage, and she deserves to pay for it. Emma was very upset by my claims. She thought I was using her mistake for blackmail, and she threatened to sue me to get me nowhere in the divorce. She even offered to take a paternity test to prove that the baby was mine in an attempt to win me back. But I scoffed at Emma's moves. As far as I was concerned, she was in no position to negotiate. The evidence of her infidelity was so overwhelming that a paternity test was meaningless to me. I firmly rejected all her proposals and said I would fight for my rights in the divorce. Once the divorce proceedings officially began, both sides took a tit-for-tat stance. Emma and I hired our own lawyers and started a long legal battle. In the courtroom, we argued heatedly over issues such as property division and fault determination. I provided a lot of evidence to prove Emma's inappropriate relationship with Alan and tried to take the initiative in the lawsuit. The whole process was very long and painful. We were required to appear in court again and again, to be questioned and cross-examined. Each trial was like a heartbreaking struggle. I saw Emma crying in the courtroom, trying to defend herself at the top of her lungs, but nothing could shake my resolve. In my mind, divorce was the only option. The lawsuit ended in my favor. The judge recognized my claim and ruled that Emma was mainly at fault, and I was awarded 60% of the property. As for the child in Emma's womb, the judge suggested that a paternity test be done after the birth of the child to determine the right of custody. The moment the judge read the verdict, I breathed a long sigh of relief. The divorce lawsuit, which had lasted for months, was finally finalized. I knew that I had won a legal victory, but I wasn't overjoyed, because this victory was built on the ruins of our love. It symbolizes the end of our once beautiful marriage. The woman I once loved has now become my rival and enemy. But I realize that this is the price I have to pay. In order to defend my dignity, in order to protect my future, I have no choice but to go through this war with my head held high. Divorce is never easy. It means saying goodbye to the good things of the past and facing the unknown future. But sometimes it is also a kind of relief, an opportunity for rebirth. After the divorce case was finalized, I thought that was the end of the story for Emma and I. But life is full of surprises and twists and turns. And not long after our separation, Emma's arrest for DUI brought our fates together again. When I learned the news, I had mixed feelings. On the one hand, I was very angry and disappointed in Emma's behavior. Drinking and driving is an extremely dangerous and irresponsible behavior that not only puts her own life at risk, but also puts other innocent people at great risk. This proves once again that Emma is a person who lacks self-control and responsibility. But on the other hand, when I think of Emma with a baby in her belly and facing jail time, I can't help but feel a twinge of heartache. After all, we had loved each other and shared the joys and sorrows of life together. Even if she hurt me, even if our marriage has broken down, but in the depths of my heart, I still remember the old love, do not want to see her into a desperate situation. After much deliberation, I decided to reach out to Emma. I reached out to her family and offered to provide them with a place to stay while Emma served her sentence. My house is a 150 square meter apartment with 3 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms, big enough for her parents and brother. I also gave them 50,000 yen from my own savings to cover their living expenses during this period. Emma's family was touched by my gesture. They expressed their deep gratitude to me, calling me a truly kind and responsible man. But I know I didn't do it to get their thanks or praise. I just don't want Emma's mistake to spread to the innocent and make her family suffer too. After Emma was sentenced to 1 year's imprisonment, I started to deal with the aftermath of our relationship. Our divorce was finalized and the property and possessions were divided according to the court's decision. I got our matrimonial home and a car, while Emma got some savings and another car. On the day of the move, I went to Emma's place to help her pack. Looking at the boxes she packed, I had mixed feelings in my heart. We had left a lot of good memories in this home, but now, all of them would be gone. To my relief, Emma and I were very calm throughout the process. We didn't argue or blame each other anymore. We unspokenly chose to part ways with dignity, to let go of the past, and to move on. When Emma was ready to leave, we hugged each other tightly. In this moment, all the grudges, all the love-hate relationships seemed to have disappeared. We both realized that we had loved each other, and that was enough. Even if our marriage failed, our lives had just begun. After sending Emma away, I began to think seriously about my future. I realized that I could no longer dwell on the past and let my failed marriage hold me back. I need to find the direction and goal of my life again, and I need to pursue my own happiness again. I decided to quit my old job and start trying out some new possibilities. I enrolled in some training programs to learn new skills and knowledge. I started seeing my friends more frequently and attending social events. I even started to try dating and meeting new people of the opposite sex. Gradually, I found that my life has been revitalized. I am no longer the man who was troubled by the failed marriage, but a new self who is brave enough to face the challenges and dare to chase the dreams. I began to believe that as long as I insisted on my own choice, adhere to their own principles, I will be able to find their own happiness. It is now the 6th month since my divorce. I have found a good job with a new company that pays 20% more than before. I've moved into a new apartment and started living on my own. I still think about Emma and our past, but I know it's a story for the past. Dear friends, I am sharing this story in the hope that it will give some insight to those who are going through or about to face marital difficulties. I would like to say that the breakup of a marriage is not scary. What is scary is the loss of self and dignity. As long as we have the courage to face and change, we will be able to get out of the darkness and usher in a new life. Every setback is an opportunity to grow, teach us how to cherish themselves, how to face the strong. Let us write our own life chapter with a positive attitude and believe that as long as we insist on our dreams and beliefs, we will be able to create a wonderful and meaningful life. Thank you for taking the time to listen to today's story. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe if you haven't already. If you have a story to share about your own or someone else's experience, please feel free to contact me. Take care.